Yeah, I think it was a good movie.
Good movie.
Good movie.
All right. With the possible, I mean, I Boner is tough. Boner's a tough one. I
I
don't
didn't even
know.
notice that.
It's like any dignity that poor guy had left. Like,
This is what I'm talking about. This is why we can't just leave it like this. This is why we can't just say it's a good movie and end the podcast because it's insane. Because every little way that we can needle him into a New York Jew stereotype writer, man, he gets needled into that direction. So then, of course, you look at the mirror image and see this other guy as a stoic, Korean, unfeeling, deep man. And then the whole thing unravels and falls apart. It's
he's
not
not
just
stoic.
that
He's
Boner
not
is
stoic.
a tiny error. Boner is the key into how this
I
movie
think it
doesn't
may
fully
be.
function
I
as the
think
holistic, generous enterprise that we're all giving it credit for being.
the Jewish writer is the he. I think he is a walking stereotype who's played very compassionately by John Magaro. I think I think the Haisung character is not quite the same stereotype. Like I think there's a little more nuance there. Boner is I mean Boner is to me that's like yeah, give it one of those like sex Jew novel names. You know, Portnoy's Complaint or Boner.
Yeah. Good
Past
movie.
Lives, a good anti-Semitic movie. I'm Matthew Buckley Smith, and you're listening to SLEERICKETS. Thank you for listening. I'm going to keep this intro quick because I got to run, take Ellie to dance. But I am going to be in Philadelphia March 13th at Fergie's Pub. It sounds like some subscribers are going to be there. I'm going to be reading with Airea D. Matthews and Timothy Donnelly at Ernie Hilbert's Everse Equinox reading series. It should be a lot of fun. So for this week, I have the previously mentioned conversation with Alice and Brian about past lives. I don't try to do a whole lot of movie episodes specifically. This one, I think we were all pretty affected by. It is a love story, but it is also, there's a lot about writing in it. And we talk about the writing life and writing stereotypes and movies versus TV shows and old versus new writing. It's like a long sort of like surprisingly heartfelt conversation, and I didn't want to trim it down too much. So I hope you enjoy it. I will just reiterate that Brian really thinks you should see the movie before listening. It's called Past Lives. It's written and directed by Claire Song. All right, I think that's enough for now. And oh yeah, if you would like to get more SLEERICKETS or get additional weird wrinkles and whole other tangents and arguments and some real poetry nitty gritty stuff, then go to sleerickets.substack.com and check that out. You can also, if you sign up for The Secret Show, you can also write me and I will send you some free stickers. I got some really cool stickers and magnets that you can't get anywhere else. I will send them to you for free, not really for free if you sign up for The Secret Show. Or if you're at the reading, if you see me in person, I will be happy to give you some there as well. All right, here's my conversation with Brian and Alice about past lives.
I've only watched it once. Have you watched it more than once?
Just watched it last night.
Oh, last night. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. Does somebody want to? I don't know. We should say the name of the movie and then not spoil it or spoil it. I always get confused.
It's called A Clockwork Orange. That's what we're talking about, right? I think we have to spoil. I mean, if we're going to talk about it, we have to spoil it.
Yeah, we're going to spoil it.
Though I don't think spoiling is really totally relevant to this one.
Well, I disagree somewhat
okay.
there. And I think that that's part of the conversation that I want your help thinking through. But it's called Past Lives. It is a movie in Korean and in English. And it is
Claire Song is the writer-director.
And it's sort of a love triangle movie. It's sort of an immigrants movie. And is it more than that? Is it more than a love triangle and an immigrant story? Am I missing some
I mean, also
main
just to be about like I mean, nostalgia and regret and a sense of possibility. I mean, alternate possibility, or roads not taken, this sort of thing.
I don't want to go first because I feel like I'm gonna thinking through it. I guess my experience watching it was I really loved it. I was really touched, especially by certain moments. And then the more I've thought about it since, the more critical or questioning I've become. So, Matthew, you watched it last night. You're closer
Sure.
to it than I. What was your takeaway?
I was moved and impressed. I thought it was well written, well structured. It was structured in a way that was not totally familiar, although it's not. It's a somewhat familiar story in its bones. It was very much written at like a play. They're basically just three characters with a handful of little peripheral characters. Almost
Yep.
every scene could easily have been set up on a stage as a basically just like dialogue between two or maybe three people in a space, a room, or a park or something. It was, I thought, well acted. Greta Lee is a strange performer, but I think probably right in this role. The male actor Teo Yu, I didn't know him before, but I thought he was probably the most like heart wrenching performance in the movie. I sort of had the suspicion, and it seems to be mostly borne out, that the story is pretty closely modeled on the writer director's own experience, down to the goofball Jewish husband.
White Jewy writer husband.
Right.
Yeah.
I did think like what you would probably most relate to, Brian, was the title of the Jewish husband novelist's book, which appears in a very like against a somber musical background for just a moment, but caught my attention.
Boner? What was it?
Boner. It was
It
Boner.
was
Yeah,
Boner. It was
Boner.
Boner. I was gonna say, did I block it out or was it
No,
Boner?
it was
No,
just
because
it was just Boner.
it was
No comment,
just
no
Boner.
anything. Just Boner. But yeah, it's a like the story is a woman, young or girl, Na Young and Hai Sung, and I'm saying their names wrong, I'm sure, but they grew up in Seoul, Korea, and Na Young's parents are artists, and they immigrate to Canada. Right, she has a sort of a friendship crushship with this other little boy. They're maybe like 10 to 12, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And right before she leaves, her mother, in like a like simultaneously compassionate and malevolent gesture, says like, "Oh, is there anybody you really like at school?" And she says, "Oh yeah, this guy, I would love to marry him." And she says, "Oh, would you like to have a date with him?" And they had this sweet little date, and the mother just like then you like reveals to his mother like, "Oh, I'm just doing this so she forms some nice memories before we leave forever and never come back." And so they then go to Canada. 12 years pass. When they're in college or grad school, these two reconnect. He has been looking for her for years. They have this sort of touching Skype pseudo romance for a while, until it takes up too much of her time and attention. And she's moved to New York in the meantime. And she kind of says, I want to be a writer here. I want to do stuff here. This is too much. We need to stop. They don't speak for 12 more years. She marries the Jewish boner writer husband, and he has a girlfriend. Things don't work out. And then he makes a trip to New York for a vacation, but it's really, it's 100% just to see her. And they have some conversations walking around New York, and then finally the 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 two of them and the husband spend an evening having dinner and talking in a bar, and then he gets in his Uber to go. And it's very spare, and not, nothing happens plot wise. It's not an affair movie. It's not a people tearing up their lives movie. But there is a lot of emotional movement, and there's a great sense of possibility that things could have gone differently. And then there's also this theme of actual past lives, which I had the most,
Which is really dumb, which is really stupid. And
I don't like,
yeah.
I don't like, I have such a hard
Didn't
time
need it.
but I also,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm such a Westerner, even in my atheism, that I like, yeah, but
I was going to say that felt like weird Orientalist stuff. I know it can't really be accused of Orientalism if it's written by a Korean woman, but that felt like a sort of extracurricular attempt to add meaning where maybe there was some anxiety about not having enough meaning in the movie, especially because it's introduced as like we talk about this idea of past lives in Korea, like as an easy way to begin flirting. It's like it's dismissed initially and then it's brought back with some more gravity in a way that I didn't quite buy. But going back to this whether it's a spoilable movie, I think it's profoundly spoilable, and in the way that you just spoiled it, where my expectations coming into the movie was that there would be, if not malfeasance, some attempt to exert power or some manipulation or something. But the reveal is that all three characters are just like really caring, lovely people who are doing their best. And I think that that's the epiphany of the movie, and really the thrilling realization in my watching it, that I kept on waiting for the malfactor to come in. You know, I kept on waiting for the person to try to undercut the other person, one of the guys trying to undercut the other guy, or the woman to turn selfish or something. And when I realized with 10-15 minutes to go in the movie that, oh, that's not going to happen, these are just good people trying their hardest, I really felt like a lightening, like a buoying of oh, I don't need to wait with anxiety about who's going to hurt whom. This is just kind people who are doing their best in a objectively difficult situation, and it would play out as it would play out. And I found that incredibly touching and artistically bold in a way that I wasn't expecting, and that made me feel good.
That's interesting. I had a totally different expectation. Like I expected it to go kind of the way it did. Like I thought maybe there would be some more entanglement, but I didn't think there would be any deception or any like betrayal.
Maybe, but I felt like both guys in most movies would be more aggressive. They were both incredibly passive in this movie, where the boner Jew guy is just articulate about his vulnerability. Like that's the most aggressive he gets, you know, where he's like, this is kind of weird for me. Like you having an ex, you know, boyfriend come to town who clearly loves you, and does the little meta riff, which I like, about how like if our lives were, you know, a fairy tale or a story, it's his love story is the more powerful one, you know, but that's the most aggressive he gets. And the Hae Sung who comes in, he like doesn't even do anything. He just stands there looking beautiful, you know, and then leaves.
Boy,
and
that's a tough moment with I mean, John Magaro is extremely charming, but like, boy, Teo Yu is good looking.
Oh, he's a beautiful man.
Like,
and it's also like not really acknowledged in the movie how beautiful he is.
They really try to nerd him up. Like they really like tighten that backpack and they
exactly, and somehow like make his muscles melt a little bit, like where it's like clear that he's like a fucking jacked, beautiful man. So I thought that it took, I don't know if courage isn't the word. It was lovely how passive both men were. But before I get to my maybe problems or issues with that, Alice, anything Matthew or I have said that was not how you watched the film?
No, not really. I'm just really glad it exists. I watched it back in December. Yeah, I was thinking today about like just how good it is to have movies like this where it's not even like last night. I watched a little movie called The Bridges of Madison County.
Oh, never saw that.
I had never seen before, but holy shit, it's a great film. Fucking incredible movie. So good. And then this morning I watched Reality Bites for the first time, which I'd never seen before. Really bad film.
But so good at the time, right?
Like, I was going to say, you can't take that out of context.
I know. Okay, all right.
Bites,
sorry.
Every single actor was just on fire in that movie. Like
Yes.
at that moment, the ability to see
Okay.
these human beings interact and flirt and be sad and full of angst was so powerful that it's almost unfair to watch it now and
I
critique it
know.
in
I know,
retrospect.
but yeah.
It's like how if I watch any movie made before 2012, it all looks like dumb and stupid and like slow and like I don't like why are these people talking like
like
that and like
racist and homophobic.
right, super racist, but not only super racist, like all like the classics of American cinema are like unwatchably boring and like affected, you know. I just keep on saying like why are they doing that? Why are they acting like that?
Yeah.
Why do they talk like that? You know,
Yeah.
like Casablanca, like
Right.
that's
Oh,
obvious and
come on.
boring. Like what is that? Like North
Right.
It's
by Northwest,
fantastic.
like
Yeah.
like well will you stop
What?
with the
What
with
are
I was
why are
you
thinking,
you
I was
like
thinking more like Scream, which is set in like a ultra wealthy white ethno state.
right right everything
Like everybody
even
lives in a
like
house that's like 1 acre
right
long.
Terminator 2, you're like that's not the most interesting stuff, like that's a silly thing, like that you're not even following the plot to its logical conclusion. I just think there's something about watching movies made before 10 years ago where like they're unwatchable, but Reality Bites fits in that category.
well,
A brief
okay.
aside, I rewatched that in college with my then girlfriend, and at the time, my uniform was jeans and a white undershirt, and I had long, greasy, dark hair, and I was literally reading that edition of Being in Time. And my girlfriend at the time, like when he had that, like when like it showed him on screen reading Heidegger, she just burst into tears.
Oh,
Oh,
not even laughter, it was
It
tears.
was like, oh god, this is like, what have I done? This has been a horrible mistake.
oh no.
But my the and the movie hasn't soured in my mind. I really
Reality
did.
Bites, you mean? It's still as good as a.
No, Reality Bites is awful and it has soured and it's spectacular and a masterpiece. No, Past Lives, in thinking how I was going to discuss it for today, I wondered why it's okay that neither of the men had any personality. Like why it's okay that there's just a woman surrounded by flat character men. If it had been the opposite, it certainly would not have been okay. Why I didn't mind it that you sort of have the strong, rugged, silent type from childhood, which, if you swap in the manic pixie dream girl from childhood and play the rest of it forward, it's sort of offensive in some way. Why one round and two flat characters was moving like that? I tried to play it out in my mind. I couldn't find a great explanation about how badly it failed the reverse Bechdel test or whatever, I mean by that these men just existed for her and her life. I guess the answer is this is from her perspective. So who cares about the men? But I don't know whether that's satisfying because it's not only from her perspective. It's from Hae Sung's perspective a little bit also, but you just have these very cliched, silly scenes of him drinking to excess with his male friends in a restaurant, which seems to be his entire characterization. So I'm wondering how you think the movie avoided the the pitfalls that it sort of so obviously should have fallen into.
I don't even know if it does though. Like I don't even know if they are flat, the male characters. I feel like they were as believable and real as she was. What did
I
you
don't know
think,
what.
Matthew?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean the Jewish husband guy, like he's a much smaller character than the other two. Though I thought he was, yeah, like I believed him well enough. For me, it was funny. Like I thought that partly it was a story about, like, even when the husband says like, oh well, you're not gonna, like, ha, but you're not gonna leave me for him, are you? And her response is, you think I would miss rehearsal for some dude? because she's a successful playwright in New York, and the whole movie, the theme in conversation between her and Hai Sung has been, what prize are you going to win? Like, you're moving to America to win the Nobel Prize. You're moving to you're going to win the Pulitzer. You're going to win the Tony. And she is extremely driven, extremely ambitious. I mean, he even says, like, Korea is too small for your ambition. And she is somebody who, she does seem to love her husband, but her primary commitment seems to be to her career. And I mean, it's funny, like, the way I read it was like, it was a movie written and directed and starring this, I mean, not literally, not Greta Lee is not the writer director, but like, this character is the central force in the whole movie. And it's all about her thriving, making active choices to make her future come true and pursue her destiny. But then, like, I mean, what was sort of the revelation to me was that she ended up not being the main character. But like, truly, I just thought, like, the most moving, most wrenching figure in the movie is Hai Sung. And partly I think that may just be because the actor was so good. Like, I think you're right, Brian, that the scenes are probably a little slight on his part, but like, you know, the, what's her name, Nora Nayoung, the woman changes her name from Nayoung to Nora. You know, she, in a way, like, her character was, I'm going to be a successful playwright. And I just felt like he had so much more, like, depth and perception, and he was responding to her and, like, cared about her, and like held her as a person in his mind that he thought about as a real person, and not just as an interesting memory. I mean, she even says, like, oh, I just looked you up as a joke, and he says, oh, it wasn't a joke for me. Like, and to me, it was just like, it was a story in which, like, oh, she was on this mission the whole time, and she's very successful in her mission, but like, along the way, she intersected with this honest to God real human being, and then he goes away and he's not part of her life anymore. And that, I did think that, like, one of the themes is that as a child she was a big crybaby, and she's always crying, and at the very beginning of the movie she's crying, and the other boys sort of comforting / chiding her. And then Greta Lee, I think, was very well cast because she's very dry and deadpan as an actor, and she's like the interesting combination of someone who is extremely attractive but clearly developed her personality while unattractive. So she's like, she has a really guarded affect, and she sort of pointedly is very reserved and very wry and smiling the whole movie. And then at the very, very end, when the guy finally leaves, she collapses into tears, which I thought, well, like, but to me, that was in part, like, it felt like an acknowledgement of this other person, Hai Sung, who maybe, you know, sees his own life as quite ordinary. He's the beating heart of the whole thing, I thought.
But that's not written into the movie so much as it is performed. Like, the moment that I thought was perhaps most powerful was just when the two of them are waiting for the taxi, and there's so much to say and they don't say anything, and they just look at each other for sort of more seconds than a movie typically gives them. And
the brief cut to them again as children in the dark was, that was when I, like, came closest to actually, like, misting up.
Feeling. Yeah, I agree. And I really,
that moment is Casablanca, Brian.
Agreed, except without all the weird affectation and talking like you're like
Casablanca's clearly a masterpiece.
Hard-boiled deadpan. Like I don't know what's going on here, say.
But that's the thing. Greta Lee is Humphrey Bogart. No, Greta Lee is Humphrey Bogart. Like, that same emotional distancing,
yes.
like,
100%. Yes. I don't know if you gave me enough credence. Maybe it's not that the two of them are flat characters, the men. It's that they are like hideous ethnic stereotypes. Like, I'm confused how we're gonna. So the only thing we know about the man is he is like a Jewish, sensitive, neurotic, sexualized writer. Like, he's just like Zuckerman. Like, he's just the Philip Roth, like, snippet character. That's literally everything we know about him. is that he's like sensitive and needy and Jewish.
His
And
commentary on himself is like, did you really think you'd be with this needy Jewish writer?
Right, this needy, sensitive, sexualized Jew guy. Like, they meet in the writing place. He's a writer, and he talks about writing. And
the first exchange is like, oh, my room, it's not so great.
I don't know why they give me the small room. We're gonna kiss at the table. So that's all we know about that guy. And then all we know about the grown-up Hae-sung is like he is suppressing his emotions because of the cultural need to, and how he's been taught not to emote. Like, he's just like Korean male. Like, they are typecast written. Yes, he has inner fire in the way that Asian men do. But like,
she even says like, he's so Korean. He's
right. That's what I'm like. I am interested in how I was manipulated to emotions, given these are just stereotypes. These are just ethnic stereotypes. I'm interested in whether the male-female reversal is of note here, and if it were the opposite, would we be offended by it? And I'm interested in whether maybe the flat characters in movies are acceptable, and I don't watch movies anymore. I watch multi-episode arc television shows where this type of flat secondary character doesn't exist. And my theory is that is sort of the difference between a short story and a novel. I don't really like short stories that much anymore. I like reading novels, and I wonder whether that analogy works. That, like, in order to fully characterize three people in an hour and 45 minutes, like, two out of three need to just be ethnic stereotypes, and there are certain beats they hit, and if they hit them well with the right cinematography, it can be moving. But we don't like having the expectations that these are three rounded characters. They're just like, there's not enough time to adequately round three characters in an hour 45, as opposed to if you're watching The Wire or Deadwood or The Americans or, any of the other.
I think, like, to borrow from maybe he may be quoting somebody else, but Brad Lighthouser, the first reading I heard him give, which was where I met Joanna, actually, he says, in poetry you take the line for the mountain. And I think in this movie and in plays and short stories, I tend to think a little gesture, like, you can't, like, no gesture is wasted. And like, a scene that did really stand out to me, I mean, in somewhat in contrast to, I mean, again, like, I don't know, I know Korean culture better than, other East Asian cultures, but I don't know it so well. But in the scenes where he's drinking with his buddies back home, early on one of those scenes, another one of his friends has had a bad breakup and is sobbing at the table. And the conversation that he and his buddies have is a little bit different than one might expect. Like it's not like, oh, fuck her, man. Like, they do say there are plenty of fish in the sea, but they also say, like, oh, well, of course you miss her. Like, you spent 3 years with her. Like, you wouldn't be a human being if you didn't miss her. And Hae-sung puts his hand on his friend's shoulder and says, cry hard. Like the sort of, like, there's no sense of, like, embarrassment that the friend is crying. There's even a sort of, like, an open, direct engagement with it, in a sense of, like, yeah, you need to go ahead and cry. And, and granted, like, it is a somewhat macho way to express your emotions, to, like, show up at the bar with your friends and say, tonight we drink till we die because you're heartbroken. But it did seem to me that there was a little bit more. I mean, it's not like there was perfect emotional transparency, but it did see, like, it didn't feel like macho American dudes at a bar not talking about their emotions. It felt a little bit more than that. I just think, like, in a movie where you don't have very many scenes with each character, particularly with a secondary character or an ostensibly secondary character, every little indication is something. And there are a lot of the, like, I don't know, I thought, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I guess, like, flat it's hard to say. Like, I think mostly we do in our lives adhere to stereotypes. We adhere to roles. And then we have little moments where whatever part of us doesn't line up with that role gets revealed, and then we go back to trying to stick to our role.
I think that's right. I think that if I were to write those two characters, I would have tried to do it in a, I would have tried to give both of them an extra surprising moment or two.
Yeah. But do you think, all right, so do you think also that you're right, like to some extent, the Jewish guys, the Jewish writer is the Jewish writer, and the Korean emotionally constipated guy is a Korean emotionally constipated guy. But I also think, like, I want to be careful here. Like, it's not that most stereotypes are true, but like we do at the moment have a sort of a, like, some of, I think particularly white writers have a tendency to say, like, all right, well, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to have, this is going to be a movie in which all of the physicists are African American, and the Jewish guy is not at all sexualized, and he's actually really tall and athletic. And I mean, I think, like, in trying to defy stereotypes, sometimes we end up almost like hanging a lantern on them. And like most of us are kind of ordinary. Like most of us are, if not stereotypes themselves, like easily mistaken for stereotypes, which is really how I read these guys. I didn't read them as being merely cardboard cutouts, but I read them as like people who, if you don't look closely, you could mistake for being just like, oh yeah, he's just another one of those guys.
So you're a little bit suggesting she's having it both ways, right? That like she's taking advantage of the stereotype and all of the implicit cultural history built in, and she's can't be blamed for the, I don't know,
I'm not saying she can't be blamed. I'm saying I think it might be simpler. I think she might just have less anxiety about like conforming to stereotypes than you or I would have if we were writing the story.
Yeah, like that's not her goal. That's not her interest to kind of dig into like what's behind the stereotype of the Korean male in 2023.
And
she
again,
needs to tell the story about fate and love.
And I think this is what happened in her life.
Yeah.
Like I think this
that doesn't matter, right? Like that.
Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. But like I do think that is what's happening. And like my guess is they are stereotypes to the degree to which the real people are stereotypes.
You see, I think she gets away with it because they're all so nice. Like I think that if,
well, that helps.
Yeah,
it helps a lot. That the pacing helps, the cinematography helps. Everyone's very beautiful. The script is gorgeous. Like, yeah, it all helps.
I don't think she could have relied on stereotype so much as if she had used negative stereotypes, or if she had, well, no, I'm not saying, what are you imagining? What are you?
Like scheming, greedy Jewish husband who's trying to break them up.
He just tries to like get the last $20 from the Korean guy. He doesn't even care about the lady.
It would be a pretty funny moment if like they had that really moving scene at the bar, and then like he really scrupulously split the check. It was like really breaking. Like,
yeah, I was just thinking though, Brian, like the film that this owes the most to is probably the Before series, like Before Sunrise, and like are Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke well-rounded in that film, or are they just?
Well, they both get their voice in the picture. The big difference between that movie and this is we know Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke by the end of that movie. They are surprising and well-rounded and annoying and sort of persnickety and vain, and they have all of these positive and negative characteristics, which is one of the reasons why I think that movie, all three of those movies, really work well. It's only Greta Lee who has any negative characteristics at all, and even those are explain awayable by the fact that she's this successful playwright, which is like, is that a category that even exists? I love how like filmmakers
Well, yeah,
can't just make their
being
people
a writer was
filmmakers.
really like it is really easy to make a living as a writer in New York. Was the other lesson I learned from this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny idea. It's like clearly she's a filmmaker, but she can't just make herself a filmmaker, so she's doing the next thing, which is successful playwright, which is like there are four of them, I think, like in America. But I don't know. I think that's actually what got me thinking down this road, Alice, the Before trilogy, and how maybe because everybody's white and Christian and upper middle class, or like they could be crappy and bad in some ways. But I felt the lack of the humanity, the crappiness in all three of their characters, but especially the two men.
Yeah, I thought that it wasn't. I didn't think the two men didn't. I thought they both had weaknesses. Greta Lee was probably the only. I mean, Greta Lee was the most active character. She's also the main character plot wise. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure that's quite like the husband was insecure. His insecurity wasn't like deforming. He didn't like become a monster because of it, but like he was palpably insecure, and
but less insecure than we are on his behalf. Like,
yeah, that's true. But
right, just like Hae-sung is less desperately in love than we are on his behalf. Like that was the odd trick of this movie to me. And maybe I said malicious or Machiavellian or whatever I said earlier, which these characters weren't, and I expected them to be. But the thinking through it again, the odd move, and I think the probably brilliant move that this movie made, was making the characters themselves less eager for their own victories than the viewers were. Like the characters are understated versions of their own emotion, articulate less of their own emotions than we know they have, or we assume they have, or we have on their behalf, which makes everything very subtle and I think surprising. Surprising.
Yeah, because you would expect, because it's a movie, they're going to go to a 10 with those emotions and those actions. But that's what makes it so brilliant. That's what I was trying to say before, is like, I'm so glad there's a movie that exists like this that shows what it's actually like what that scenario would actually be like, would be exactly like how it unfolds. There would be no betrayal. There would be no screaming in the rain. There would be no, oh, my father just died and I just realized that I love you.
Like everyone's basically a decent person.
Yeah.
A thought I did have throughout the movie that, and maybe like it wasn't necessarily that I thought they would become bad or they would become Machiavellian. It was that initially my thought was, because you do see there's a quick shot of which I thought was actually a pretty like clever little introductory moment where you see the three main characters at the bar, but what you hear are the voices of some people elsewhere at the bar speculating about why these two Asian people and this one white guy are sitting together at the bar. And like the fear I had watching it was, this is going to be, oh, what a glorious decades long romance, what a special remarkable thing this is, and like the refrain in my mind was like, this is the sort of thing that happens all the time. And in the end, it was the story of a thing that happens all the time, but it was just told very movingly, I think, very artfully.
So what do you make of that framing? Why do you think it was there? That first scene, those characters never come back. We're not, something about the writer, she wanted to plant in our mind that something untoward or unusual is happening here.
I don't think it's, no, I actually don't think so at all. I think it reminded me a little bit of The Dead. Like the mechanism of The Dead is the fractal pattern of The Dead. The James Joyce story is like individual people with extremely complex and rich inner lives continually collide with one another while not quite accounting for the complexity of the other person's inner life. And here it was, I mean, to me, like what was the framing of it was not ooh, what's the, I mean, clearly as a storyteller, like part of what you're doing is you're saying like, oh, here's a question I'm posing. How will it get answered? Let your suspense, bring you over to the next scene, the next page.
But why not have the viewer think that herself or himself? Why have that voiced by an invisible character who never comes back? I'm saying that it is, you're dismissing the intentionality there. Like that, having the whole movie begin with, ooh, I wonder what's happening in that triangle, is the biggest autorial decision in the whole movie in some ways.
Yeah, but I didn't. It was funny. Like I neither expected those voices to come back, nor did I think that their if anything, that they were voicing that speculation made me think, okay, well, there's like, it probably is not even remotely what they're thinking of, and the framing was not like, here is this intrigue and let us discover the mystery. It was more like any person you pass on the street is the TOU of some shattering romance that goes unresolved and unremarked upon. Like it is a very ordinary story in many ways. And I mean, in some ways, like it is like it is a really wrenching but very ordinary romance. It's not Romeo and Juliet. It's not Tristan and Isolde. It's not Troilus and Cressida. It's a very ordinary romance, but it still is life changing and soul searing. Just nobody dies or cheats on anybody.
In order to be as powerful as it is, does it need to be in the minority of narratives in that way? Like it is the power that it plays against our expectations.
I felt like that was true for me. Yeah. I'm just always so relieved when I get to sit in a cinema and nobody dies or cheats on anyone, or you know, just nothing. People just talk in a kitchen, which is why Bridges of Madison County is a really excellent film. 2 people in a kitchen, whole film, fantastic. It's just it doesn't happen very much. It's just constantly getting like horrible stuff hurled at you.
False advertising. Where are the bridges?
There are bridges. There are bridges in the movie. There are bridges too.
Okay.
Yeah. I always feel such relief when I get to watch a movie like this.
But yeah, maybe the question then is like, is that relief in part because of the way in which your expectations get set by most movies? Probably is kind of probably the answer. Yeah, probably.
I mean, which I think is successful counter programming. Like that, that's not a criticism, but it is my trying to figure out. I mean, this conversation has been my trying to figure out why I like it in spite of all of the criticizable aspects of it. But I think it's just because it was a really well written, well acted, well filmed movie with subtle emotion as opposed to maximalist emotion. And I think that it was a lovely way to spend an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, I have like a both like cynical and maybe admiring thought on the stereotyping, which is, I can imagine that for a lot of the eager beaver liberal culture consuming critics, part of the impulse in watching this movie and praising this movie was like, oh, look, it's an important movie in which we get to experience Korean culture. And in some ways that's a bait and switch. Like, yes, half the movie's in Korean and much of it takes place in Korea and 2 of the main characters are Korean, but this is a love story. This is a very human, pretty universal love story. And if like getting the, if the particular flavor that's put on it brings you in the door, great, sure. If that like makes you feel good about the fact that you're writing about this movie and not some other movie, then like great. But it just seemed like that was I don't know if that was deliberate, but it was effective.
When you mention the fact that if you or I, Matthew, were to write these characters, we would have to complicate them.
I think we would feel compelled to complicate them. I don't know if we would be correct in doing so. I think we would be more anxious about that stereotyping possibility.
And do you think that would help the movie, play, novel, poem?
Not necessarily. No, I think that is, I think in a way, like what you're describing is a neurosis of white writers.
What do you think, Alice?
Yeah, I don't know.
I have no idea. Absolutely no idea.
Because it certainly is a neurosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an anxiety. I mean, yeah, maybe that is part of what makes this such a relief to watch as well, is that anxiety is sort of like there and not there.
And is that a luxury that non-white writers have?
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like we might be kind of drawing this a little bit too far. I'm really not sure. I just hope she wins an Oscar.
Oh, did the Oscars not happen yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think it got nominated for stuff.
Yeah, it got nominated for Best Screenplay. So that would be nice for her because she is a successful playwright. And, you know, the whole thing being like, I'm going to win her this and that and the other. So if she wins an Oscar, that'd be lovely. That'd be good for her.
All right, then play this out for me for a minute, Alice. I'll go into this mode and then I'll let it go. But the same movie, except about a man who was career obsessed, who had one love of his life from his birth country, whom he abandoned, and she's been pining after him for all this time. And all we really know about her is how much she loves him. He is entirely career driven. He makes them stop interacting because he wants to focus on his career. He then finds a sexy little American girl who is obsessed with him and has her own thing going on, but she loves him and wants him to have a great career. The woman who is pining over him comes. There are two women who both love him. We know, and then he decides to say, you know what, I know you've loved me all my life, but it's really my career and my new sexy American girl I'm after. You go back home to Korea, you Korean girl who've loved me your whole life. That's not an acceptable movie, right?
Oh, no, it isn't.
I think it would have been a couple decades ago.
So what I'm,
but I also think you made a not insignificant switch there
from something to sexy.
Yeah, like I think like, even what if it's exactly this movie, except Teo Yu is like a short nebbishy guy and the Jewish husband is a model. Like, does that change our feelings about all this? If he's like this sort of, there's like a slightly whiny, short, like charming but like goofballish, not athletic Korean guy, and then like this big strapping athletic runway model husband. Like, does that change our feelings?
It does. The puzzle pieces have to be perfect.
Yeah, but that's like, isn't that how like screenplays work? Like, isn't that how art works? Like, everything you have, like, you get compensation for one thing with another. Like that's isn't that how this works?
No,
I think like John Cassavetes could have made that first movie you described back in the day, and it could have been great.
Oh, yeah, I think he did. Yeah,
I think that was all he
called
did,
Husbands.
Right?
It was called Faces.
Faces, okay.
Fuck, I hate some of those films. I really love some of the other films.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I just think like we wouldn't have the appetite for it today for various reasons, but yeah, I think that movie's been made, and that's fine.
What did you have to say about erotic thrillers that was going to make me angry?
Oh, not angry, but
I'm so angry.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what prompted it, but no, I was. Oh no, what? Yeah, so I was thinking like who like the people who like looking at sexy naked women writhing in a gratuitous sex scene are straight men and Alice. And then the people who
just about to say, do not rule me out.
Right. Yeah, no, straight men and Alice. And then the people who like looking at like the thing I did find funny is like I saw an article on how Jacob Elordi and Barry Keoghan had a trainer for Saltburn, for all those like athletic fight scenes they did. No, like so they would be hot when they were naked. So like they would be extra muscular and rippling when they were naked. Like people who like to look at like bulging, sweaty, naked man bodies on screen being objectified are maybe not mostly straight women. Like it might be another group that is the primary consumer of that kind of scene. And so in some ways I was saying like my theory was like the erotic thriller for women is not either of these types of erotic thriller, but maybe something slightly different. But that was going to make you angry because men and women are
because gender doesn't
identical.
exist. I see.
No, I think there are.
Yeah,
I think there are movies
can't...
that are erotic thrillers for women. I just don't think it's. I don't think it's this model of erotic. Like I don't think it's a
like The Notebook or something
thriller with like sweaty close-up naked scenes that are like independent of storytelling, right?
Your point is that gay guys like looking at big sweaty
like erotic thrillers
men.
Exist for straight men and gay men, right? That's like and then straight erotic thrillers exist for Alice as well. But in a gay way.
Yeah, in a gay way.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Oh, fuck, I had a point. I'm just so upset that you don't like Casablanca and I just can't get past it.
I do like Casablanca. It's fine.
Oh, you do like Casablanca? Okay.
I mean, I don't really want to watch it though. I'm not interested in turning it on and seeing it in front of my eyes. I just don't
really.
I think that there's something about every movie made before 2016 that just strikes me as absurd. That you watch it and you're like, why?
No. Wait a minute. Wait, okay. I thought you were saying something different. I thought like what does seem true to me is like mainstream, like baseline acceptable entertaining movies that are more than 10 years old are horrifying. But like,
no, I'm saying all movies.
Like actually good movies from other like those. Like there may be things that feel dated, but they basically hold up. It's like it's movies that you would like go to the movie theater, laugh at, be entertained by, but otherwise not think about. Those movies, if you see them and they're more than 10 years old, you think like, holy shit, this is fucked up.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I am in the minority here, and I know it's not an acceptable opinion to have. And I haven't watched enough. I haven't watched enough movies from before 1992 to be able to discuss why I dislike them all. I think that except for a small handful of masterpieces,
not including Casablanca,
I don't enjoy the experience of watching these people thinking like, why are they talking and standing like that? Like it's almost like watching Shakespeare. Like I don't like it. It's
stupid and pointless, like watching Shakespeare.
Yes, I don't like it. I don't like watching Shakespeare. I don't for the same reason. I never seek out Shakespeare to watch. And when I do, I'm bored immediately, unless I have the play pretty much memorized, as is the case with like 4 plays. And then I find it all very like interesting, the decisions that they make on an intellectual level. But entertainment, no, I don't like it. And I don't believe the vast majority of people who say they like it. I just don't, I don't think this is entertaining. I think this is signaling. Like I
think that's often true. Yeah. But that's true. That's true of like a lot of things, right? A lot of art forms.
Right. A lot of art forms, including movies made before 1992 or 2012 or whatever, and all of Shakespeare. I don't believe that these are entertainments. They are entertainments.
Do you think that helps prime people to fake their enjoyment of pretentious bad poetry and art that's made right now as well?
Well, now we're talking about a whole lot of different things.
Why not fake it with this guy?
Because I think that far fewer people are asked to fake it, or in a situation to fake it with opera or contemporary poetry, than they are with Shakespeare. I think a regular part of many Americans' lives is to go watch the new version of Romeo and Juliet, or to go see, because their parents feel like they should be taken to the local play that's new putting up of Macbeth. And I think that everybody hates that. I don't think that anybody is asked to watch, to read, the latest A. Stallings poem, which they would equally hate. Just nobody does that. I think that there are a small number of people who really enjoy going to the opera and who really enjoy reading contemporary poetry, but we pretend that the number of people who like Shakespeare is bigger than that. And I don't buy it. I
mean, don't you think a lot of people do that the same way that they go to church and pretend not to be bored? Or they or even if they don't pretend not to be bored,
yes, but we as a society don't.
This is good for us.
Yes, I agree, but I don't think that's the way it's usually considered. I think church is, the assumption is we're all going to be bored and hate it and not really believe in any of this, but we're doing it for our mothers or wives or souls or something. I don't think that we go into,
those mothers and wives, they really believe it, but
no, but that's my point. It's, everyone knows it's a farce, but we do it because we do it. We do it because it's tradition and because there's a grandparent somewhere or a theoretical relative.
But don't you think that's what people are doing when they go to see a play by Shakespeare?
Yes, that is exactly what I think people are doing, but that's not what people acknowledge to be doing. I think we live in a society that pretends that Shakespeare is enjoyable. We don't live in a society that pretends that church is enjoyable.
I don't know, but maybe I think like the way people pretend to get certain things out of a religious service may not be so different from the way they pretend to get, because the way they pretend to enjoy a play, I mean, I would say like most plays that get put on today, people are pretending to enjoy, but I would say the way they pretend to enjoy them is not so different from the way they would pretend to enjoy, or the way they would pretend to get something out of a religious service. Like when I would go to see,
but now you're talking about how like you're talking about social justice theater now, and
I mean not necessarily, because I mean like that, yes with social justice theater, but also with high art where they're going thinking that like what they're not doing is saying like, oh, I'm going and having a rip-roaring rollicking time. They're going and saying like, oh, I'm really getting something out of this, which is about the way we talk about religious services, right?
No, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a cynicism built into atheist Jews that isn't into theoretically non-atheist Christians, but I don't, when I talk to people who go to church, it's a lot of like, no, Sundays for church. So I guess,
are most of the people you talk to who doing it for their kids to have some tradition? Is that where they're doing it?
Yeah, I think that they would articulate it in a variety of ways, that the church has meaningful morals, that my kids will have traditions, that it's important for the grandparents, that I believe in God. Like I think that the people I talk to church go to have all.
Do you talk to that many people who say they believe in God?
I mean, I teach at Grace Church School, which is associated with the church, and many attendees of Grace Church School, where my kids go and where I teach, are also church goers, and many of them are sincere about that. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's not the same as I'm going to see the Maria Abramovich naked play thing, where like everyone pokes forks into her breasts and she endures it, which is like ridiculous, but I'm going to get something out of it.
That's almost easier to imagine people going to just like for the spectacle and weirdness and conversational, fodder of it, rather than going to see, like, people. I feel like people would be much more sincerely eager to go see a freakish naked performance art piece than to go see, the Ring of the Nibelungen or whatever it's called.
It's weird though, because this movie is the kind of movie that you would go and see because you get something out of it, and it's like a very worthy thing to do. But then we all watched it and we all really loved it. It's in spite of that. So sometimes it works.
It's funny, maybe the defense of the past lives trope in the movie, because clearly the past life that actually is the real carries weight in the movie is like the little life they had in Korea together.
Yeah, that's
the actual life. Literal past life in the movie. And the conversational trope, which, as you said, she dismisses early on by saying like, oh, that's this is a line people use to get other people into bed in Korea. Like, I read that as, in a way, like, maybe not that they ignored that later when they brought it back up, but that was framing it again later as like a way they could all talk about. Because even like when he said like, well, you and you and your husband have the 8,000 layers of in Yun of past life to connect you, and that's why you got married. Like that seems like like nobody could possibly have ever believed that thing, that like when two people get married it's because they have 8,000 intersections of previous lives. Like that seems like a self-evidently crazy idea, but also like a kind of thing people might say the same way they say lots of things that are rooted in some tradition or another.
Okay, so I agree with one part of that and disagree with another. I mean, I think that there are a billion people who believe in reincarnation in various degrees.
But the specific marriage 8,000 layer thing, that part.
So if you're going to believe that I used to be a grasshopper and after that I was a blade of grass and after that I guess you don't go from, but it's
you were
just
really a shitty grasshopper is what you're saying.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're a terrible grasshopper, you can blade of grass, and then after that you can become a piglet. Like if you believe all of that, then like I don't know why the 8,000 thing is any more difficult to believe. But yes, I think you are right that the screenwriter here didn't forget that she dismissed the past lives trope as sarcastic and then it became sincere. I think she's very aware of the fact that it's used in these different ways in different moments, and it's become a shared vocabulary with which they can discuss real emotions towards the end, where it's dismissed earlier on. I think that's right, and that's the purpose of introducing it initially as a vocabulary of flirtation, and then later on as the only vocabulary they have to discuss the horror of him leaving her, going home alone, and no longer even having hopes of being with her again.
Though maybe there's actually the thing that hadn't occurred to me is that she is the one who cynically dismisses it early on, and then Haisung is the one who brings it up at the end, and that may be another little microcosm of like there is a thing that she can talk about and can play at and can even write impressively about, but that he actually is. That he had like there is a sincerity to him that in a way like the trade-off has been that she's like her life is about something else that makes that cynical dismissal possible and maybe necessary, and whether or not it's like a straightforward naive belief for him, he is fundamentally more sincere about all that than she is.
And she gets the catharsis of crying, and she gets the happy marriage, and she gets the good career, and he gets nothing.
Right. Yeah. No, but that's partly what I thought was actually somewhat, if not innovative, like a little bit unusual about it, was that he's really he's the truest human being, and he isn't the main character. Like we see him in passing. Like
he's not the truest human being. He's the tragic figure. He's the most suffering human being.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's a concept developed, by Black people in America. But I would say like he is the soul of the movie. Like it's just that he's
meaning the one who suffers.
Sure, I don't think it's quite as simple as that. Like I think it's not just that he suffers; it's that he experiences that. Like it's not just like he has the misfortune of having bad things happen to him. It's that he experiences it in a really full way, and he is sort of the reservoir of feeling for everybody else in the movie. And he's not the main. I mean, in a way, like he is the Icarus in the background of the painting.
Yes, but he's also, and the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm understanding the emotional weight. He's a massive loser, right? If you look at the three of them, the guy she ends up with gets the girl, is a successful novelist, has a full happy life. She gets the successful happy career, has a full happy life, gets the guy. He gets nothing. He has no job to return to. He can't even pine after.
He does have a job.
No, he hates it. He says that it's a job that is so piddling that women won't marry him, right? A woman who he's with won't even marry him. His job is so embarrassing. I think he lives with his parents, And
But
he,
she also says that's very normal in Korea. Like,
sure, she says that, but she doesn't say that with applause.
right,
He lives with his parents. He has a shitty job. He's got this one fantasy. He goes and pursues it, and then retreats without really going for it. Even he's a giant loser, and I think
Well,
you think he's the soul of the movie. He's kind-hearted and beautiful, but for some reason that doesn't get him anything in Korea. So he's this guy who has this trajectory of just like pining after a woman, having nothing good happen to him in the meantime, not getting the woman, and the movie ends. And I think that that's the power of the movie, just how fucking sad and horrible that is. And I do now see it as a little bit more manipulative than I did coming into it. And I'm happy to be manipulated by it. I'm manipulative, not in a negative way, but in I understand the way the mechanism works now in a way I didn't an hour ago. The way the mechanism works is you have a love triangle, two people get exactly what they want, but we are focusing on this guy who doesn't get anything he wants. And that's really sad.
Yeah, though I do like and again, maybe I'm going to be the Orientalist here, but I mean, even in his comment about like you needed to go to America because Korea is too small for your ambition, like you're right. Like he doesn't get any prizes and he doesn't get any laurel wreaths, and he doesn't achieve his goal. But also, like he has a pretty ordinary life, and it also seems to be a very Korean, like it seems very ordinary in the context in which he lives. And he lives with his parents. We do see him with a lot of his friends. The only people we see her with are these two love interests and like people she's sitting across a table from in rehearsal or at a reading. And she, like, all of the meaning in her life is meaning she has to achieve. Like her achievements are the meaning in her life. He can take like the meaning in his life he takes from other people as well. Like that he has known her has given his life meaning, that he has his friends at home, that it's like, I guess like to me, I saw it in a way, like it feels like it reveals a little bit of the hollowness of American individualism.
Except he's profoundly dissatisfied.
Yeah. I mean, I know, but I think I also
he's
think
unhappy.
Yes, he's unhappy. But he's,
so what is it? What Korean stoicism? What does that get us?
Korean stoicism, but I think it doesn't. Individual achievement is not the source of meaning in his life, and I think
there is no source of meaning in his life.
No, I think it's like it has been a significant thing to him that he is knowing her has been a significant thing.
Taken away from him.
But in a way, like she is a richer person as a person he has known than she is in her actual own existence. And I don't think that's probably extends only to her. Like it just like to me, it was a glimpse of like, oh, there actually is a different way of thinking about what gives life meaning that's not necessarily just built on your own individual resume. And I think for Greta Lee and John Magaro, they have their resume.
But if he becomes some Jesus figure who gives meaning to other people while suffering himself, like, I don't know. Sucks.
No. I actually see it the other way around. I see that like he's able to take actual meaning in his life from her life, where she can't, like she could take zero satisfaction in her own life from that she has known him and that he is somewhere in the world.
But he is sad and depressed and unhappy.
Yeah, I know. Again, I'm not saying, and so it's better. I just think that like he is sadder and his life has more meaning.
According to whom? Not like, the film.
Like that's my no, but I don't like even the way he talks to her in line when he's asking her about the awards, and he says, "Oh, you're the same person I've known." That is
he's in love with her.
Yeah, he is in love with her. I don't.
That's why he says that stuff. He's talking to her like he's in love with her.
But he is enriched by that love in a way that she's not. Like his life is richer for love. That's what I mean. Like I think
his life is paralyzed because of her.
No. I think that's the bit that I feel like you're maybe skipping over, is like when he gets to make this trip and meet her in person, that I feel like to him that is worth everything that you're saying that he doesn't get, like he gets that. He gets to have that.
Seems pretty paltry to me.
I don't think the movie tells us that it's paltry. And I personally don't think it is either.
Yeah, I mean,
At the start, when the mum is like, I just want her to have some good memories.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
another example of that. He gets to take that memory home with him.
Is she wise for that act, or is she callous?
The mother,
Yeah.
I don't think it's meant as in a callous way. I think it's, I keep thinking about this phrase in Japanese, which I know like Japan and Korea are very different countries, but there is a phrase that they often say in Japan, which is, oh, we made a good memory when we did this. And that's like it's a significant thing. It's a worthwhile thing to do because we made a good memory. Then we get to think about this thing for years to come. This is not nothing.
I think about the thing you said about your kids giving your life meaning for good or ill, and the, my suspicion, like I am terminally American in my sense that like if my life has any meaning, it's something I have to personally achieve. I think that has I mean, on the one hand, it's like, oh well, good, I got a screenplay out of this experience, but on the other, I just think like it feels very lonely and very hollow. And like if you are able to actually take meaning in your life from, say, like, and maybe it's different, like, oh, I knew a girl once and now she's living a life in another place and I feel connected to that. Like maybe that feels sadder than my kid whom I fathered and raised is living a life that I am proud of and interested in, and that gives my life. Maybe that feels more authentic or more legitimate. But I think like, however you're able to do it, if you can feel enriched by knowing and being connected to people in the world who have their own lives, like that is probably, I don't know if it's straightforwardly better, but it feels like maybe that's a more sustaining source of meaning than simply like, what have I done lately?
I've been thinking about divorce a lot lately, not because of my marriage, but because I have friends who are
Yeah.
thinking about divorce, and the difference between having a kid turn 18 and leave the house and having a kid turn 18 and getting divorced and your partner leaving the house feels substantial to
Sorry,
me.
I'm slightly confused. Like the kid also leaves, or like those two
No,
things
forget the
coincident?
18.
Or-
What I mean is having the kid turn 18 and leave the house is different than spending 18 years with your partner and
yeah. Oh,
having
yeah.
and
And then
having
having
your
a divorce.
partner leave.
Even different than if the partner died.
Yes.
Like you would
Yes.
still retain that partner would still you would retain the sense of being having your meanings linked, your lives linked, in a way that with a divorce it feels like there's a kind of a you're losing a limb.
Yes. And there's something about the memory itself which is unstable, right? Based on what you just said about it's sort of easier to have a partner die than divorce from that partner.
You don't have to
Not
cut them out of the photo
in
albums.
terms of memories, right? It's like
Yeah.
I no longer have that person. Whereas with my kids, I will possess my kids forever. There is nothing that can happen where I will no longer have my kids.
Yeah.
Even if, God forbid, they die,
Sure. Yeah.
or if they renounce me and join a cult or something. Like the memories of parenthood are mine. Whereas if maybe it's because I've never had multiple serious relationships, and you two can speak to that better than I, but I feel like after no longer possessing someone, after that person leaving me actively, that making the decision to leave me, I don't really have the memories anymore, because so much of what's built into the memory is hope for the future, or expectation, or continuity, endurance, something like that. And
like a mutual choosing.
mutual understanding, right? A mutual
like
choosing.
if they're like things get in a way like negated by a decision to say like, oh no, actually this was a mistake.
Right.
Yeah. And then somehow retrospectively it all gets tainted.
Right. And that's why the decision for the Greta Lee character at the end is so significant, because it's not like if she goes and goes back to Korea with her Korean ex, at least her Jew husband will have had the memories. And it's not like, in my mind, if she stays with her Jew husband and the Korean guy goes home, at least the Korean guy will have the memories, because what he's been writing all this time is this potential. Like, it's probably not going to happen, but there's a woman out there I love who might love me too.
Oh, I don't think that's true.
I know you
Yeah,
don't.
I
I know
don't
you
think
don't. I know you
Yeah.
don't. And I think that that's the difference in how we watch the movie, where I think I see it as he's not even willing to admit to his friends that he's going there to see her. Like, this is he does it when he's at his lowest. He's finally going to go for it in some ways. And it's a massive risk. And he's profoundly disappointed.
I don't
And then he
know.
goes
Yeah.
home.
I don't get any of that.
I don't think that's what happens.
But it sounds like you are profoundly disappointed for him because you are rooting for him. You want him to get the girl.
No, I don't. I think,
Oh, you don't?
Because I would be, I think that that's the situation that the film sets up, where a man will be devastated regardless, even though everybody is nice. So I'm not rooting for him any more than I'm rooting for the husband.
Right.
A possible complication, it's a very small thing, but it's something we haven't mentioned, is that in several different ways, the husband has added to his own life specific, like he is learning Korean. He's like deeply involved in and appreciative of Korean culture. Like she mentioned some food that the other Korean guy's like, oh fuck, he likes that. And he like speaks regularly and like plays a Korean game with her family. And it feels like, yeah, it would be, you're right, there would be like a real poisoning that would happen if she were to leave him. But it seems like his life actually has been expanded. Like he says like, I feel like you make my life bigger. And like maybe those are like cheap touristy, white colonialist ways to appreciate her, but it does feel like he's, in a way, like he is a little bit more like Hae-sung than Greta Lee is. Like there's I thought like a sort of touching moment when she's away in the bathroom is when the Korean guy turns to the Jewish husband and says like, you and I, we knew each other in a past life. Like what, like we have some connection.
Yeah, totally. And I only see that as to reinforce my sense that one of them is going to be devastated by the end, where if
what about, all right, so I despite having no preparation as a young person to believe in past lives and just having a hard time with the whole concept, and not generally being especially persuaded by or moved by past life discussion in general, or even in the movie, I did find myself a little bit surprised and moved by, and it is partly because it coincides with, there is a moment right when they're waiting for the taxi at the end. He finally goes to get in the car and then he turns to her and says, hey, and there's a quick cut to the two of them as little kids again in Korea, standing in the same positions in darkness, and him, he's just called out to her. And then it cuts back and he says, what if we're already in another life and this is just one of our past lives? And I ended up like, I was surprised by how much that moved me. And I can't quite account for what my thought is about it, but it did land for me.
Yeah, well, that's where he gets the hope that you want him to have, Brian. It's
Maybe
a pretty big zoom out. But
maybe we're already something else in another life.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, that's the closest he comes to articulating how fucked he is. Like it's the only way he can from his vantage point, articulate his devastation, saying like, I guess it's too late for us now, but maybe we're together somewhere else.
You might be right, but I just never felt like he went on that trip with an intention of like getting her in any way. I think he just wanted to see her.
Well, Alice, remind
that's
me because in a way it revises for me the ending of Casablanca a little bit. It is Bogart who says, because at the end of Casablanca, famously, Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, who are in love, have to separate because she has to go with her husband, who's the leader of the French resistance, to go, help defeat the Nazis, and it's the right thing to do. And Bogart helps them get on the plane and helps them escape. And he has to say, they have to say goodbye to each other at the airport. And he says that, the problems of two people don't amount to a hill of beans in this world. And then is he the one who said the last thing he says is, "You will always have Paris"? Or what is that line I'm thinking of there?
Okay, like give me a second, because I think I can almost recite it.
You've only seen the movie 50 times.
Well, look, yeah, he says we'll always have Paris. We lost it, but we got it back the other night. The whole time she's resisting. She doesn't want to get on the plane.
Yeah.
He basically shepherds her onto the plane and then walks away with the general guy. Oh my God, Ryan, it's so good.
But like in a way,
and I'm just gonna say there, hill of beans is such a stupid phrase. It takes me out of the moment immediately.
In context.
It's just in context. I mean, it's you, because I was about to say, like, you're right. Everything you're describing is so beautiful and so perfectly touching.
The problems of two people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world is the full line, and it's a great line.
Beans.
Hill of beans. It's fine. It works.
It
works
been like a heap of dog turds. You think that would?
Well, it pretty much is that, a hill of beans. The idea. I mean, if you take that away from the cliche of it, right, and you talk about it as just like, what image are you imagining? What hill of beans? It's just like, it's the stupidest. Like, it's just so dumb. Either it's a meaningless cliche, or you're actually thinking about a hill of beans. And like both of those are unacceptable. I feel like a hill of beans. You must have said exactly. Oh, this
what actually happens is like she was heartbroken, and the moment he says hill of beans, she's like, she just dries right up, and she's like, all right,
she's like, it's fine. I'm gonna get on the plane. I think
hill of beans.
Right,
I gotta go with Laszlo.
That's actually Bogart doing the like, get old yeller, get out, I don't like you anymore. That's what he's doing. He's turning her off to get her on the plane. This was almost like if Ingrid Bergman had the last line, like that's what the past lives felt like. It was like if she, there's something a little, it's framed a little bit differently, and it might actually be more poignant. It did remind me a little bit. Do you know the movie Dirty Pretty Things? Very bad title for a very good movie, I think.
Yeah, I just watched it a little while ago.
Oh yeah, there's that last there's that exchange between Chiwetel Ejiofor and Audrey Tautou. And then the phone call to his daughter. But to me, Casablanca is the corollary I think of with that, where there is something between them, but like whether or not they might have something in the future, he has to go back home to get his daughter. But yeah, that came to mind as well as like a similar kind of. I mean, there's a different. It's a different tension and a different obstacle, but there's a similar like sense of something that could be that then won't be.
Yeah, and I guess it's just like, how does that sit with you as an audience member? Like, is that a kind of tragedy that actually that feels good in a way, or does it just make you feel like awful because everything always ends and everything's always terrible?
I showed that movie to Joanna when we were first dating in Baltimore, Dirty Pretty Things, and at that moment in the movie, she burst into tears and said, "Watch this."
Every movie you've ever showed a girlfriend ends up with her bursting into tears.
And that was like, I don't know if it's accurate, but like my impression watching Greta Lee is that is that like, and she has like just the very, very faintest suggestion of some acne when she was younger. Like just looking at her, I think like she is very beautiful, but she was not always very beautiful, and that seems apparent in her manner, which to me is like that's a sign of good character. Like I'm suspicious of people who were beautiful throughout adolescence.
Yep, agreed. If you want to go down a bit of a rabbit hole, which I haven't mentioned yet because I don't quite know what to do with, the most vicious criticism online about this movie is from Korean people saying that she doesn't speak Korean correctly, even though the movie tries to make sense of it as she moved when she was young, that she acts poorly in Korean and the lines aren't even written. The dialogue isn't even written well in Korean. And it's just a movie for white people about Koreans, and that everything that takes place in the Korean language, acted in Korean by her and written in Korean is embarrassing.
Is Greta Lee of Korean extraction?
No, Greta Lee is American, born to Korean parents.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, like.
Oh, extraction. I guess I don't know what that word means. Yes.
Yeah. Was she extracted from Korea? No. Like is her family Korean? Okay.
Her family is Korean, but she was born in the United States.
Yeah.
And she grew up speaking Korean, but in the interviews, in an interview I saw, she said that was her biggest anxiety as well, acting Korean.
But maybe, yeah. I mean, it seems maybe not so far off from the experience of the character /
from the character, exactly.
Director,
that's what it seems like, whether that was written in or not. She even says like, or I forget whether when they're on Zoom, she says my Korean is so bad, or he says you're not practicing, or she says I only speak with my mom, or something like that.
But I would, I mean, like it may be fair to say like basically this is a movie for Americans, not Koreans. I do think that it would be, if somebody wanted to make a case for why this was a really important movie about Korean culture, I would be highly skeptical of that claim. This just seems like a universal love story.
It is my 10-year-old son's favorite movie.
Wait, what?
This movie?
I watched it with Alex and Owen as a sort of punishment for Owen. He was misbehaving. He was supposed to have a sleepover with my parents, but he was being like obnoxious or something. And Alex said, you can't keep on acting like that or else you can't go on the sleepover. He's like, fine, I just won't go on the sleepover, because like he's 10 and I don't know, like he wanted to be right. And she said, fine, but we're just going to do all the things we were going to do anyway. And he's like, fine, I don't care, I'll do them too. And 10 minutes into the movie, he was just like he was totally in it, like totally into it. He never watched the movie with subtitles before. He'd never watched a grown-up movie about love before, any of it. But it just
they are kids at the beginning, like they are kids at the beginning.
Yeah,
he desperately wanted to know who was going to fall in love with whom and how it was going to all work out and how life isn't fair and what would you and mom do and what is this like. Aww. And you have ex-girlfriends and his mom, and would she move and would we go to a different country? And it's past lives.
Wow.
10-year-old.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you both, is like, because you both got like kids are sort of not quite, but around the age that the kids in the movie are. What do you think's the youngest that you can have like what's the youngest you can fall in love?
I think pretty young, probably, depending on how it's. I mean, I think he suggests at one point that like had she not left, this probably wouldn't have left the mark it did, and he's probably right about that. But I think if you have the right formative experience, it can be pretty young.
Yeah, love is I think complicated in the way you asked it, because I don't know if they fall in love. I think they have a moment and then he imbues that moment or that friendship with love as he gets older. I think kids love each other. I think my 8-year-old son has a couple friends at school whom he wouldn't use the word love about because it's embarrassing, but he's deeply attached to those other kids. And then if one of those kids were to die or something, I think that he could rewrite that narrative into love as he got older. But I think the difference between love and the excitement of burgeoning friendship is maybe too complicated for me to differentiate between.
given what you said about the way we think about the future, even with like, because so much of, at least for me, I was, extremely sexually repressed growing up. Like so much of early, love is not even articulable. Like even if you were to try to say like, so
Yeah.
what is it you want exactly? It would be like, well,
Yeah.
that's not like I can say exactly, but there is a sense of, with whether it's, in most cases between sexes or whatever, like if there is a sense that like, oh, but maybe someday this could become something else, then that can have a lot of power to it, even if it's just, a kid's fantasy.
Yeah, yeah, you're fantasizing about something you don't quite know what that fantasy is, but
Yeah, there's like an
yeah,
excitement, an endurable excitement or something, and like wanting to
yeah,
be around that person.
yeah. And that's generally as far as it goes. Like, you just want to be near them.
There's also like the difference between a crush and love is interesting. The sort of mutually articulated aspect of love, I think is exhilarating, or felt in both directions. There's something different between having a crush on somebody, which children do, I think, at all ages, just sort of like finding themselves attracted to, or but not physically even, just like wanting to be around that person. Like you'll see that with a new coach on a team that like the kids get very excited about, or a young teacher, or a friend, or whatever it is. There's that category, but then there's the you and I have something special relationship, which can be a best friends thing, which is why I think those best friend things can become so charged and lead to such vulnerability, because it feels so important. And if that is ever broken, it feels like such a tragedy in those kids' lives.
Maybe part of why I attribute a little more meaning, and if not happiness, then like soul or richness or something to Haisung's sense of connection with her. I mean, she I think one of the truer things she says in the movie is that the little girl you loved isn't sitting here with you. I left her behind, but and the way she says is, I left her behind with you, which suggests both like I left you behind and I left her behind, but also like the place she existed is with you. Like you're the one who has her now, and that's where she exists. But when I think about any old romantic relationship of mine, or crush, or even like a lot of friendships, even friendships with like people I am still friends with, like it is very hard for me to feel a straightforward nostalgia or even
Yeah.
like fondness for, like, I know like Joanna will talk about like her early boyfriend. She just has a sort of like a warm, fond feeling about that whole experience. All of that for me is very poisoned by my own loathing of myself in that age. Like it's hard for me not, like, it's all sort of blackened by my own contempt for my younger self. And so the fact that he's able to sort of take heart in that earlier hopeless love suggests to me that he, at least, like, that there may be something even more intact about his sense of self than with her, where for her there really is like, when am I going to win the fucking prize, is where the meaning comes from. Whereas for him there is something maybe more stable about who he is, even if he's deeply sad.
I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's a good one. I have one more question before we call it a day,
Yep.
because I realize how I would have written, even if I were to have written the same arc, I would have had them definitely kiss,
Mm.
possibly have sex. That would have been the wrong decision for this movie, but it's definitely what I would have done.
Yeah.
How does that change the movie if
Well, then
they kiss or have sex and then go their separate ways, right? And never to see each other again.
I think that throws the focus onto the husband. I think at that point, you start to think about, how's he doing? What does he think about this? Is he going to be able to forgive this? And we get to continue to root for the that main for Nora and Haesung because they don't do anything wrong, quote unquote.
Right, but would it have been wrong for them to sleep together? Because
No.
you're right that the focus would have been. So the beats at the end of my movie are they kiss briefly when they're waiting online for the boat or whatever that is, or on the boat.
Sure, yeah.
She feels guilty about it, doesn't tell anybody. They then meet up one more time, have sex. The interaction among the three of them is even more charged. The husband doesn't know why. Maybe he finds out that night. Maybe he doesn't. She then goes back to the husband. Other guy goes back to Korea. And we're left with the husband's arm around his wife with the implication that they're going to try to make it work. But we don't know what damage has been caused. Korean guy goes home to Korea with the implication that he's not going to see her again, but we don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I think in that scenario, everybody loses a lot.
Yeah, I think it's actually, it makes a big difference if they did have sex once much, long ago when they were younger versus if they have sex during this final climactic visit, because I think if they have sex at this climactic visit, a kiss is a little different. I think that you could shade that a couple different ways, but if they have sex at this climactic visit, then in an odd way, the whole relationship becomes about building up to this achievement of sex. Like sex becomes in a way like the product of all this, and that becomes the important thing, even if it's not betrayal. I mean, even if honestly, like the husband did know and said it was fine, like it's about like, okay, well, we've been doing all this and leading up to, and here's us having sex finally. And then in an odd way, it's like, okay, well, how good was that sex? That's what it's all about? Whereas without any consummation, it all remains charged with meaning in the same way.
Yeah. And in that silence, in that 2-minute silence, that minute silence, whatever it is, while they're waiting for the Uber, if they kiss there and then he leaves forever, does that make any difference at all?
I think it depends. That's where like if it's a kiss that's a like,
it's not a sad kiss. It's a let's give this a real shot, passionate 10-second kiss.
Yeah, then, but I think that is still in a way, like then that becomes more like the sex thing. Like here's us doing a thing or trying a thing versus like there's another version of that where I could see the kiss being a sincere goodbye. That's not like, I just think like kisses can mean different things in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with Korean, I don't know, it might be different, but like if they were French, they would kiss and it could just be bye. If they were French, if they were Icelandic, they could
give
have
them a blowjob
and
then they would split up. Yeah, exactly.
That was my Icelandic classmate was like, oh, we have sex that's like shaking hands. Like, well,
yeah, you probably just want him to kiss her and her to just stand there.
Speaking of body language, when she does collapse into the husband's shoulder sobbing at the end, he puts his arms around her. She does not put her arms around him.
She's devastated.
She just hangs there. No, I mean, it's just like it was.
But she allows him to comfort her.
Yeah, like it was just. I'm just thinking it was a choice. Like it was it read differently than if she had thrown her arms around him too. She just collapses and he holds her up. That was this week's show. Thank you all for listening. Do come see me in Philadelphia at Fergie's Pub on March 13th, along with Airea D. Matthews, Timothy Donnelly, Ernie Hilbert, Coleman Glenn, Sam Howard, Coleman's wife, maybe Stephen Angela, maybe Francis Bass, and a slew of other lovely and talented people. You can reach me, as always, at SLEERICKETS@gmail.com, and with any luck, I will be speaking to you again very soon. Until then.